Exactly like Carlos.
This is true. Unlike Jen, though, and unlike Cleveland, Miami, and Carlos sort of alluded to this a little bit, I think Miami is a little different when I was growing up than when Carlos was there. Because you're so much younger than I am, obviously. There was not a lot of music going on, classical music going on in Miami when I was growing up, and it was actually a bit of a tough scene. I started playing when I was, not like, tough like people were getting mugged or anything.
But what he means is the orchestra went bankrupt. Our
Yep.
orchestra that we went to, that I went to as a kid, went bankrupt. It was a tremendous orchestra.
Folded when I was 10.
Yeah. And it's an MTV culture there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of that going on. Classical music is not really the thing.
Exactly, yeah, so it's hard. So I got me started actually at 10 years old. I came home to my mother in 4th grade and I asked her for $5 and she said, well, why do you need $5? I said, well, I auditioned for this violin program where they measured my arm and made me sing 5 notes. And I got in and I need to pretend a deposit for $5. And she was like, why, my mom's a Cuban immigrant. Nobody in my family's ever been a musician. So she was like, violin, and I thought it was very exotic. I thought it was very cool. So I never understood when kids said that they felt like nerds carrying their case around. I felt like a celebrity. So I started when I was 10. The teacher was a bass player, so you can imagine how beautiful my Terry Vanelli.
He was my middle school orchestra teacher.
Fair, Miami. Love Terry, but you can imagine how great my technique was. My teacher was a bass teacher, and I was a bass player. So I started taking lessons finally. That's funny we don't talk about it. I started taking lessons when I was 12. And that's really when I fell in love with the violin. I saw my teacher play Schnittke Concerto with wind ensemble, and I found that to be very boring actually. But then I saw the University of Miami Orchestra play Tchaikovsky's Fifth Symphony, and I was like, that's what I want to do. And here I am now, and I'm sure if I read the U of M Orchestra now, I'd be like, oh my God, these people, But back then I thought they were just incredible. So so I started doing research in the music schools. I was obsessed. I knew where everyone taught, from like 8th grade. I was like desperately searching. Where did all these people go to school? Who did they study with? How can I go there? How can I be like them? But there was always this problem for me that I loved other things. I loved to write, and I loved math class, and I loved politics, and there was so much I wanted to do, And I remember when I did the Sphinx competition, I met people who didn't go to conservatory, who went to universities. Some who went to music school at universities, and some who just went to university and then went to like a conservatory for graduate school. And I realized I could kind of maybe I could do more than one thing. Maybe I can do both things in my undergrad. And that kind of led me to, well, I should say, all during this time, like in high school, I think I said this actually, was this last night in the concert, but most of my hardest work on the violin came during the summers. It was really hard for me to get a lot of work done during the year. My teachers were not fantastic teachers. They were lovely people, one of them was. But it was, it's just hard. And I would go away and I had great experiences in the summer, and that really helped. That really helped me to be a better violin player. So I did my undergrad. So I decided I would go to a university for my undergrad, and not to a conservatory. I went to Michigan. Correct. And I tried to double major. Okay, and I failed. I didn't fail. I got very good grades. But I failed at finishing that double major because it's a lot harder. And it's probably a lot of you are thinking about this too, and you can ask questions later. It's a lot harder than you might imagine to try and do more than one thing really well. And in music, you got to do it really, really well. So I realized somewhere towards the end of my undergrad that I wasn't done. I wasn't done. I needed to keep going in music, and so I decided I would not finish the academic side of my degree, and I would go get a master's in performance. And I went to CIM with like my colleagues here, so we have it in common, among other things. And I really tried. I tried so hard to focus there, to focus on one thing, and I failed at focusing on one thing too, just like I failed at doing 2 degrees. And I got really involved in early music. Does anybody know what I mean by early music?
Yeah.
What is early music?
Gregorian chants.
Yeah, Gregorian chants. That's some early music. I was not chanting. No, I was playing Baroque violin, anyway, I couldn't focus. I'm a disaster. But that was a good moment for me at CIM because, like Carlos said, it's a big orchestra school. Everyone wanted an orchestra job when I was there. And so that made me realize that I did not want an orchestra job. That was not going to be the thing for me. I like to talk a lot, and in orchestra you have to sit there quietly for several hours. And I would get fired so fast.
Not true.
No, I know. Nobody's quiet in orchestra. It's true, actually. She makes a good point. Yeah, we would be cutting out. So anyway, so I realized that was not for me. And eventually my violin professor for my master's said to me that, you know, he's like, I really think you would do well in academia. He's like, my job is the best job in the world, being a violin professor, and I think it would be really good for you. So I auditioned for, does anybody know what a DMA is? Wow, that's good. You're too young to have to worry about these things. But this is a Doctor of Musical Arts. So that's the last degree you can get in performance. And it's what trains you to, well, theoretically trains you to teach at the, it's the credential for teaching at the college level, somewhat. It's a complicated story. We can talk about that some other time. In any case, that's what we do beyond the master's if you're going to continue on a performance. So I went and did that. All the while, as I focused, my playing, when I focused a bit more, right, because I was doing this Baroque violin stuff, my playing got so much better in my master's, and I'm still so glad that I did my master's and didn't go off into something else, because I started getting the types of, winning the auditions I wanted to win rather than sort of being waitlisted for everything. I started playing with, once a year I would play with Apollo's Fire, the Baroque Orchestra in Cleveland, and I was invited back to Tanglewood as a new Fromm player doing new music and chamber music, so I started like really accomplishing the things I wanted to accomplish, but I stopped kind of, I just wasn't enjoying, once I was in my doctorate, I wasn't enjoying performance as much as I once had, which is kind of the whole purpose. And I was still missing that, that other side, you know, the thinking side and the writing side. For me, it just wasn't as present as I wanted it to be in that program. So I made the very questionable decision of applying to PhD programs, right, which is another type of doctorate. You've heard of a PhD, probably, more than you've heard of a DMA, right? A little bit, yeah. So PhD, right, it's a doctorate you get, and then you go teach it. Doctor. So then you go teach at university. You teach something else, not violin, but maybe you teach musicology, or you know, which is like music history, right? So I'm getting my PhD now in ethnomusicology, and I love my life in that world, and I'll tell you a bit more about that. But well, I'll tell you about that. So basically, what my job now is I write about music, and I listen to music, and I go places. I was in Cuba for 3 weeks in June, doing some preliminary field work for a potential dissertation topic. So I go out and I see things and I think about them and I write about them. I'm giving a paper at a conference a few days after we're done here. I have a book chapter due at the end of this academic year. That's my job. And I have coursework now still at Harvard, another year of taking classes. So that's what I do. And that's a whole other, Clifton too is a graduate student in music theory, another aspect of music studies. So that's a whole other side of our field. But I'm still trying to find this balance, right, where I'm still a violinist, I still play. You know, I just gave my dissertation recitals for my DMA.
You played a concert last night?
I played a concert last night. So I'm still trying to find this balance in my life, and I'm trying to come up with I'm still trying to come up with a hybrid career. I'm still trying to answer the question that I was trying to answer when I was 18. But I'm having a lot of fun doing it, so that's my story.
So we go to the first